We've gone over the worst, now it's time for the best, as we count down to my all-time favorite Robin costume. Before we begin, be sure to subscribe to Comic Island for more top 10 videos and other comic book related content. Number 10. Jason Todd, New 52 Robin. Now in the video we did about the top 10 worst Robin outfits, I came down pretty hard on the Red Robin design and even harder on a lot of Jason Todd costumes. I knew both types of outfits would have their defenders, but to be fair, I don't hate all of the New 52, and one thing about it is it has given me the sole version of a Jason Todd Robin costume that I really think is relatively original and looks great. For most of Jason's career as Robin, he always relied on a dated copy of Dick Grayson's original gear. He never got a chance to truly have his own Robin identity, at least not until flashbacks from the New 52 showed us this excellent new retroactive design for the character. It's distinct from Grayson's take on Robin, a great example of how to make a character armored without it being ridiculous given his age, and is the perfect example of where a major reboot, like the New 52, can really update older characters in a way that actually benefits them, given that up until this point, I found Jason's Robin outfit pretty lacking. I believe this costume was designed by Kenneth Rockefort and Blonde, but I could be wrong. These things are hard to tell sometimes. But whoever's behind this thing, whatever the case may be, they did a fantastic job in creating one of my all-time favorite Robin suits. Number 9. Duke Thomas, Robin War. In the Worst Of video I mentioned how I really liked this design of Duke Thomas in the story event Robin War and the comic series We Are Robin. It seems like, for whatever reason, this character is not destined to ever permanently be Robin, but the idea was definitely teased and played with for a while. Given the sheer number of Robins out there, it is probably best that Duke has gone on to forge his own identity as a distinct superhero, especially now that he has some sort of superpower thing going on. Still, this simplified, basically cobbled together Robin outfit that consists of little more than a jacket and sometimes a pair of goggles or a helmet not only looks cool, but purposely evokes the ongoing themes of the series We Are Robin and Robin War, where it is most prominently featured. The idea of these stories was that anyone could take up the mantle of Robin in the wake of Batman pretend dying for the second time. So you had this legion of random kids suddenly take up the mantle, creating political friction within Gotham in what I look back on as a pretty fun story on the whole. Leading the charge of these new Robins was Duke Thomas, and his outfit, along with the other Robins that showed up around this time, were all pretty fun. They were all these new takes on an 80-year-old character, most of which were made by artists Rob Haynes and Carrie Randolph, who really showed all sorts of cool ideas with what looks like cobbled-together costumes formed from the garbs of items discovered in closets and buried within racks of thrift stores, all heavily augmented to evoke the colors and sensibilities of a kid who once dressed like a bird and dared to fight crime. Duke's the one that stands out the most in my memory and the one that I tend to prefer, but it's better thought of as the best in a solid collection of costumes, however briefly they were used. Number 8. Young Justice. There's something about the character design of those seen in Young Justice that's just striking. Yeah, it's important to understand why I picked this costume when you get right down to it, because it's just not terribly unique. An all-red Robin costume was old news by the time this animated version was created, and that's especially true when it comes to Tim Drake. So this specific costume rings is very familiar, especially in the world of animation, where pretty much this exact outfit, but just under a different animation style, was used in the 1990s. And yet here we are with a show I've never really taken to personally, but have always respected, and we're looking at a design of a Robin so well done, and so slick and so well animated, I find myself including it as one of my favorites. Sometimes you can set aside all these feelings of nostalgia, history, or originality, of which I have none towards this outfit, and just appreciate a fine design. In the case of Young Justice's Robin, thanks to the show's excellent animation and commitment to quality, this take becomes an easy Hall of Famer. Number 7. Earth 2, New 52. And yes, I'm happy to say I'm far from done praising at least some of the designs that came out of the New 52 in the world of Robin. I love the Earth 2 take on the Robin we saw, however briefly, reimagined as the daughter of Bruce Wayne and Selina Kyle, Helena Wayne. This version of Helena would, like she had in the past, ultimately become the Huntress, but we'd get glimpses of her time as Robin before that, with what I believe was an outfit originally designed by artist Kevin Maguire. This costume and others, to me, represent a great example of how to do an armored Robin right. This is a little exaggerated and a little big, but not so much it compromises the Robin identity or that it looks ridiculous. What it looks like is a costume and a character that's tough as nails, but also full of life and color, evoking a happier time before the fall of New 52's version of Earth 2. This is a fun-looking character with a pretty original design that instantly gets me excited and leaves me wanting to see her more in action. Sadly, we never get to see a lot of it, because Helena's story in the New 52 is that of her fleeing Earth 2 for Earth 1 and becoming the Huntress. This costume is really just history by the time we meet this character. To be fair, that's because Helena just makes sense tied to her usual identity of Huntress, which she pretty much claims alone, which is so far from the truth with Robin, it's funny. Still, I think there's a lot of value in this outfit being part of her background, and it would be fun to see again in some form someday, even if that takes the form of just simple flashback stories or something in a completely different alternate universe. Number 6. KELLEY. I know I'm picking one that not everyone is going to agree with here. This trend seems most prevalent with these kind of top 10s, as it's always visual stuff like costumes that becomes the most subjective. With that in mind, me personally, I love the KELLEY design by Frank Miller, Klaus Janson, and Lynn Varley. I get people don't love how close an approximation this is of Dick Grayson's original outfit, or that KELLEY is 13 years old and showing off a lot of leg here, but both criticisms I feel kind of miss the point of this character and her outfit. It's a deliberate throwback to Robin at a time when he was not meant to be treated that way and was not designed, drawn, or written as such. In a story of darkness, in a world fallen to corruption and ruin, in a world where Batman was long gone and Superman had betrayed his own values, Robin's costume marked a strong stance in terms of Batman's return. Within the context of The Dark Knight Returns, the outfit evokes a call back to a more innocent era, something core to the identity of Robin itself as it's come to exist in the modern age. The costume very carefully evokes meaning within its own story simply by being a colorful beacon against the darkness of the world around her character. That exists not just in the function of KELLEY as a literary device, but in the form of her well-designed costume. And I credit a lot of that to the bright colors that really bring her to life thanks to Miller's then-wife, colorist Lynn Varley. All told, it's a great costume and part of why The Dark Knight is so strong, especially from a visual perspective. This costume easily stands out to me as a personal favorite. Even if it is very similar to Grayson's original, it has a couple of distinct features, like goggles and a slightly altered logo, that do help make it stand out a bit. But the point of it was not to be too different, but rather a firm memory of something that once was, and in this world, a long distant memory. In that regard, it's a very successful costume in my eyes, from the perspective of its design. I love this outfit to pieces, though I really can't speak to anything going on in the trash sequels. Number 5. Dick Grayson Original. And now we have what is potentially the most controversial choice in all of these best and worst Robin outfits videos I've made. Because I've seen critics and fans rank this outfit dead last. Many more beyond that, at the bare minimum, rank it in their personal bottom 10. But I, and other people, disagree completely. I think if anything, I've underranked it slightly in favor of some personal preferences, and in spite of this costume's tremendous importance to Robin history. That's on me to live with, because this is a pioneer costume. If you like any iteration of Robin, you owe that outfit to this original design, and that design lasted for decades, surviving different generations of writers, artists, editorial staff, and even changing business philosophies. Though some argue this Robin costume stuck around for too long, and I even agree once they carbon copied the damn thing for Jason Todd in the early 1980s. And when the character had changed, it felt like it would have been a good idea to change the costume with it. But I don't feel the costume is overly dated in a general sense. Maybe it shouldn't be used for modern Batman comics anymore, but its sleek, simple, and colorful design is still what I think people would most readily identify as Robin across the world. Versions of this costume have been successfully used as far back as the Burt Ward days, and as recently as the Lego Batman movie. I think when it comes down to it, it's not so much that the costume looks all that bad or is terribly out of date, it's just like KELLEY, nobody loves seeing a kid with shorts this short. My view is that this sort of thing doesn't bother kids, and it really needs to just be understood for what it is by adults, a kid in shorts. It's very normal for kids, and I think at its core, Robin's character is all about that sort of youth and innocent, and that's why this costume still churns up every once in a while in some form or another. Maybe at first Dick Grayson was made to just appeal to kids and give something for the younger brother to do when the older brother is playing Batman, but at some point that changed. Robin in general has come to represent a more innocent side in the world of Batman, and one that is constantly under threat. The boy that died in Crime Alley and had been out of Bruce Wayne's life deep into his career as Batman was suddenly returned in the form of a new boy, and one that Bruce Wayne has suddenly found himself consistently tasked with stopping from losing that innocence that Bruce himself lost so long ago. The whole thing about the ongoing dynamics behind the different Robins for the last 40 years or so has been about Batman's efforts to try and preserve this innocence, and the challenges of that when the darkness can be overwhelming, or as has happened with pretty much every Robin at this point, darkness ultimately wins in some form or another, and sooner or later, Robin has to grow up. So when I look at the Dick Grayson outfit, well, I start to think of all these things. The beginning of everything great about this character's history is tied to this strong, brightly colored, aggressively simple outfit that is just pretty much a boy dressed as Robin Hood. And that identity and vehicle of change is baked into this specific version of the costume more than any of the others. Green undies and all. Number 4. Stephanie Brown. Next up is one that, to a degree, really comes down to personal preference about as much as any outfit can be on this top 10. Perhaps more so than the others, if that sort of thing can be measured. Stephanie Brown's costume is pretty standard from what we might expect out of a Robin suit. It was basically just Tim Drake's original outfit, slightly augmented for Stephanie's female form. Although different artists have played around with the belt and coloring and other little details over the years. I personally most enjoy the version she made for herself in her first canon appearance as Robin, or the version we saw this year as part of the Robin 80th anniversary special book thingy. But they're all pretty much chasing after the same original design by Damian Scott and Guy Major, who did a great job. Sometimes simplicity works best in creating a memorable Robin, and this costume is a good example of that. Part of what works is that, quite simply, I think Stephanie's character is well suited to the Robin outfit, and the whole thing just looks natural on her. That's likely why her time on Robin left such an impression on people, myself included, even though that time was very short, nor was it exactly successful. But while I like this costume, I wouldn't have ranked it this high were it not for the Robin 80th anniversary book. A very recent revisitation of this costume that showed us how Batman and Alfred took special care to augment a version of Drake's outfit just so it would fit Stephanie and she would feel comfortable wearing it, as the ones designed for the young men were completely uncomfortable on her. I liked that moment and it really stuck with me for whatever reason. It definitely improved some of the details when it came to Batman's treatment of Stephanie back in the day. It's a nice little moment for the first female Robin in official Batman continuity, and also adds to the tragedy of what ultimately happens to Stephanie following her original brief stint as Robin. When I talked about how Robin has come in many ways to represent a threat to an innocence very directly involved in Batman's life, Stephanie and her fall as part of the War Games story is a pretty strong example of what I'm talking about. I mean, it's not perfect, but it does have its moments. I've heard people remark before that women tend to wear the Robin costume well in general. And given the results of this top 10, which happen to include 3 different female characters in a predominantly male superhero role, I think that argument holds some weight. I didn't set out to do this, but it's worth noting that Stephanie, Helena, and Carrie are not exactly the first names that come up when talking about Robin. Yet each and every one of them, for whatever reason, look great when they wear this costume. Number 3. Damian Wayne. All versions. We haven't talked about Damian in this video yet, mostly because, by and large, the young man has pretty consistently worn the same outfit in his time as Robin across most comic books, and even in the world of animation. The reason for this is quite simply the original design by Adam Kubert from the Grant Morrison days was well done and always perfectly suited Damian Wayne. Over the years, artists would alter it slightly, but I really think that comes down to the individual style of different artists, more than any substantial, meaningful change to the outfit. Because at the core of every take of Damian Wayne's Robin is a pretty classic design, using coloring that has been around since the Tim Drake era, but with more armor and a slightly more angular look to every piece of fabric. That made the costume a bit more tough looking while also slimming down an already teeny tiny Robin. This worked well to evoke the broad strokes of Damian's character, a Robin unlike any other before, born and bred to be an assassin. His costume reflects that, and better yet, does so without compromising the original Robin identity. Anyone who's the most basic of Batman fans can look at this costume and easily identify a Robin. And even though Damian's outfit is similar to pretty much every Robin that had come before it, the slight differences to the costumes from before make this costume distinctly his. It's extremely difficult to imagine any other of the main Robins wearing Damian's outfit, and that's not entirely because of the size difference. I really like this costume as a modern take on Robin. It served Damian well in his long time as the superhero. Right now, it seems like he's given up the mantle, and it might very well be the case for a long time. Or no time at all, or even forget it. Because I could see this character going on to forge his own identity along the lines of Red Hood or Nightwing. So the sky's kind of the limit for where Damian's character might go from here. And that feels right for someone who has never particularly followed in the footsteps of either his mother or father. So we don't really know what the future looks like for Damian, but regardless, his costume and time as Robin will always be an indelible and essential part of his past, as well as the history of Robin as a whole. Nothing can change how Damian gave the role of Robin a certain level of flair that it never had before. And I think this awesome costume was a huge part of that. Number 2. Tim Drake, the animated series. I agonized a lot over this one. Due to the time I was born and the media I grew up with, this outfit was always going to hold a lot of sway over me. Parsing my feelings from the very real importance of this costume and its design to the Robin history was difficult. In both this and the worst of video, I've talked about how red as a color has often been used as a way to distinguish Tim Drake from his predecessors. That actually started here. This costume is about as influential as it gets without it being the original itself. I really do find this top 10 video shows how I tend to really respond to nice and simple, colorful takes on Robin. This bright red version absolutely gives off that innocence vibe, which really pays off when we consider what happens to poor Tim Drake in this particular universe. But what a story, what a character. What an amazing standard to set in terms of the quality we can expect out of Batman and Robin stories. On reflection, it's a little funny how much people pay attention to the completely sloppy original comic book death of Jason Todd and overlook this masterful corruption and fall of Tim Drake as detailed in my all-time favorite Batman Beyond story. That is the implicit threat of Robin. Somebody Batman cares about who has not been worn down by the darker elements of Gotham and the drudgery of Bruce Wayne's life could suddenly and without notice go in that direction just with a little bit of trauma. And with just about every Robin that's ever existed, sooner or later, it's gonna happen. Because it's kind of part of growing up, and time again, that generally spells the end of Robin. And that's why I think it resonates with me beyond fleeting little moments of nostalgia. I really think the designers and creators of this version of Robin, but also Batman the Animated Series, The Adventures of Batman and Robin, and Batman Beyond, really understood Batman in a way nobody else had before. There's a reason why this animated series had a tremendous effect on the type of Batman stories that were being told in the comics. It doesn't always go in that direction, especially not from a simple children's cartoon, but this costume and the animated universe they created as a whole had a tremendous effect on what people expected out of Batman as well as Robin. But in spite of all this love I have for this costume and the series it came from, it's not really the costume I think of when I think of Robin. Sure, I ranked it number 2 and I really like it, but it's not really the kind of costume I'd like to see in future adaptations of, say, a live-action movie. At least not at first. Number 1. Tim Drake Original. I don't know if there's a Robin costume universally loved by all Robin fans that would denote a clear-cut winner, but I know for sure it's not this one. I imagine some people are utterly baffled by this choice or just disagree completely. These things are subjective, but I do have some reasoning going in here. First and foremost, I think this is the first proper take on a Robin that actually upgraded the looks from the original Dick Grayson design in a positive way that wasn't just stupid or silly looking. Though DC had toyed with the idea for some time, it took this costume by one of my favorite historical Batman artists, Neil Adams, to truly create a Robin for the modern age. And this has pretty much been the blueprint of every costume that's followed, including every costume outside of Dick Grayson's original and KELLEY that we've talked about today in this video. This outfit has so many firsts. It finally gave Robin pants, which, while I am a defender of the undies, have their place in history and just don't make sense for a Robin in the present day, in a world with more serious Batman stories. Pants made sense, just like the shorts did at one time. I appreciate the history, but I exist in reality, and with it we got an updated Robin logo into a version I still think is the best one DC has done to date. And the best detail is the cape, neck, and boots were all given black. Not too much that it drowns out or disrupts the clear display of Robin colors, but just enough to make him look that much cooler. This is the costume I think of most when I tend to think of Robin. If DC ever gets brave enough to put Robin in a live-action film again, this is the look I want to see the most. Best of all, it has a special sort of meaning to me that's very specific to Tim's character. Remember, Drake's whole thing is that he sort of forced his way into being Robin. He can figure out Batman is Bruce Wayne and slowly carve himself a place in the Dark Knight's life at a time when Batman absolutely did not want to have another Robin. So this costume is the end result of Tim's careful, hard work, deductive reasoning, and ironclad will. More than any character in history, it feels like Tim Drake earned this costume. He fought for it. It was a result of effort, and ultimately was the deciding factor in ranking this one number 1. So that's it in terms of my favorite Robin videos. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Did you agree or disagree? Do you have your own favorite preferences? I'd love to know what everyone's favorite costume is, because I doubt everyone's going to land on the exact same one I did. So please let me know in the comments section what your favorite costume is. Thanks for watching, guys, and stay tuned for more top 10 videos and more here on Comic Island. We'll see you next time.